There's a version of you that needs to die. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. Actually die. That version of you who hits snooze 5 times every morning. That version who makes excuses when things get difficult. That version who starts projects but never finishes them. That version who says, someday, and maybe, and I'll try. That version who settles for comfortable mediocrity instead of pursuing uncomfortable excellence. That version has to die, and you have to be the one to kill it. This is the hardest thing Brian Tracy teaches, and it's the thing most people refuse to do. They want to become their best version, but they want to take their old self along for the ride. They want to add new habits while keeping all the old ones. They want to develop discipline while maintaining their comfort. They want transformation without destruction, and it doesn't work that way. You cannot become someone new while clinging to who you were. You cannot build a new identity on top of an old one. You have to let the old self die completely. Most people don't understand what this really means. They think letting go is some gentle process of gradual improvement. A little less of this, a little more of that. Slow, comfortable change. But that's not letting go. That's negotiating. That's trying to have it both ways. And when you try to have it both ways, you end up stuck exactly where you are, wondering why nothing ever really changes despite all your efforts to improve. Real letting go is violent. It's painful. It's a complete severance from the person you've been. It's looking at every habit, every pattern, every comfortable routine, every familiar excuse and saying, this isn't me anymore. This isn't who I'm becoming. This has to end right now. Not gradually, not eventually, right now, today, this moment. Because every minute you continue being your old self is a minute you're not becoming your best self. Here's what people miss. Your old self isn't just a set of behaviors, it's an entire identity. It's a complete system of beliefs, thoughts, and automatic responses that has been reinforced for years, maybe decades. You've told yourself stories about who you are so many times that those stories feel like facts. I'm not a morning person. I'm not good with money. I'm not disciplined enough. I'm not the type who succeeds at this. These aren't descriptions of reality. They're the prison bars you've built around yourself. And as long as you believe these stories, as long as you identify with them, you will act in ways that confirm them. Your brain is designed to keep you consistent with your identity. It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to help you by making sure you behave like yourself. The problem is, if your identity is based on limitation, if your identity is built on past failures and comfortable mediocrity, then your brain will sabotage every attempt to rise above that. It will create resistance. It will generate fear and doubt. It will whisper all the reasons why you should stay where you are. Not because change is impossible, but because change means becoming someone different, and your brain interprets different as dangerous. This is why willpower alone never works for lasting transformation. You can force yourself to act differently for a while, but if your identity hasn't changed, you'll eventually snap back to your old patterns. It's like stretching a rubber band. You can pull it far from its original position, but the moment you let go, it snaps right back. The only way to create permanent change is to change the identity itself, to literally become someone different at the core level. Brian Tracy understood this deeply. He teaches that transformation isn't about doing different things. It's about being a different person who naturally does those things. And becoming a different person requires letting go of the old person completely. not improving them, not fixing them, not making them slightly better, letting them go, releasing them, allowing them to cease to exist. So how do you actually do this? How do you let go of an identity you've carried for so long it feels like your true nature? You start by recognizing that everything you think of as you is just a pattern. It's not your essence. It's not your soul. It's not who you truly are. It's just a collection of repeated thoughts and behaviors that have created a sense of identity. And patterns can be broken. Patterns can be released. Patterns can be replaced. The first step is brutal honesty. You have to look at your old self without any filters, without any justifications, without any softening of the truth. You have to see clearly how that version of you operates. What excuses does it make? What patterns does it run? What limitations does it accept as unchangeable? What does it do when things get difficult? How does it respond to opportunity? How does it handle discomfort? You have to see all of it, the complete picture, no matter how uncomfortable that is. Most people can't do this. They look at themselves through a fog of self-deception. They see what they want to see or what they can tolerate seeing. They minimize their flaws. They exaggerate their efforts. They blame external circumstances for internal failures. And as long as you're lying to yourself about who your old self really is, you can't let it go because you can't release what you won't acknowledge. So you sit with a piece of paper and you write down the truth, not the story you tell others, not the version you post on social media, the truth. I say I want to be healthy, but I eat junk food whenever I'm stressed. I say I want financial freedom, but I spend money impulsively on things I don't need. I say I want meaningful relationships, but I avoid difficult conversations. I say I want success, but I quit when things get hard. Write it all down, every contradiction between who you say you are and who you actually are, every gap between your stated values and your actual behavior. This is excruciating. Your ego will fight you every step of the way. It will try to soften the truth, to add qualifications and justifications. Yes, but it's because I'm working on... No, just the raw truth. Because until you see your old self clearly, you're still identifying with it. You're still defending it. You're still protecting it. And what you protect, you preserve. Once you see clearly, once you've written down the complete honest picture of your old self, you have to make a decision. And this is where most people fail. They see the truth, they feel uncomfortable, and then they immediately start thinking about how to improve their old self, how to make it a little better, how to fix the problems while keeping the core identity. But that doesn't work. You don't improve your old self. You declare it dead. This is not a metaphor. You need to have an actual moment where you consciously decide, that person is not who I am anymore. That person ended today. That person's patterns, excuses, limitations, they're all finished. I'm not that anymore. You say it out loud. You feel it in your body. You make it real. This is a death, and you need to grieve it properly. People don't talk about this part. Letting go of your old self, even an old self that was limiting you, is a loss. That identity was familiar. It was comfortable. It was predictable. You knew how to be that person. And even though that person wasn't your best self, there's still grief in letting them go. So you let yourself feel it, the sadness, the fear, the uncertainty. You don't run from these feelings. You don't suppress them. You acknowledge them. Yes, I'm afraid of not knowing who I'll be. Yes, I'm sad to let go of the familiar. Yes, I'm uncertain about whether I can really become someone different. But here's the crucial part. You feel those feelings without letting them change your decision. You can be afraid and still move forward. You can be sad and still let go. You can be uncertain and still commit. The feelings are valid, but they're not in charge. You are. And you've already decided. The old self is gone. Now, you're in the space between who you were and who you're becoming. And this space is terrifying because you don't have an identity here. You're undefined, unformed, open. Most people run from this space the moment they feel the discomfort of not having a clear identity. They rush back to the old one or grab onto something familiar. But this space, this undefined space, is where transformation actually happens. This is the creative void. This is where you get to consciously choose who you're becoming instead of defaulting to who you've been. You have to stay here. You have to tolerate the discomfort of not knowing exactly who you are. Because if you rush to define yourself too quickly, you'll just recreate a version of your old self with minor modifications. So you sit in the void. You practice saying, I don't know who I am right now, and that's okay. You resist the urge to fill the emptiness with familiar patterns. And while you're sitting there, while you're holding that uncomfortable space, you start to ask a different question. Not, who am I? But, who am I choosing to become? This is the critical shift. Your old identity was based on your past, your patterns, your history, your previous choices. But your new identity is based on your future, on who you're deciding to be, on the person you're consciously creating. And that person doesn't exist yet. You can't be them right now because they're not formed yet. But you can start taking the actions that person would take. You can start making the choices that person would make. You can start thinking the thoughts that person would think. Brian Tracy calls this acting as if. You act as if you're already the person you're becoming, not in a fake way, not in a pretend until you make it way that feels hollow, but in a way that recognizes that identity is created through action. You don't wait to feel like a disciplined person before you act with discipline. You act with discipline repeatedly, consistently, and eventually you become a disciplined person. You don't wait to feel like someone who follows through before you start following through. You follow through over and over, and that repeated action creates the identity. But here's where people get confused. They think acting as if means ignoring their current reality, pretending they're already successful when they're not, pretending they're already disciplined when they're not. That's delusion. That's not what this means. You fully acknowledge where you are. Right now, I'm out of shape. Right now, I'm in debt. Right now, I lack discipline. You see the current reality clearly, but then you act from your future identity anyway. I'm out of shape, but the person I'm becoming works out every day, so I'm working out today. I'm in debt, but the person I'm becoming manages money wisely, so I'm making a wise financial decision right now. Every single action is a vote for your new identity. Every time you do what your best self would do, you're casting a vote. Every time you choose the difficult right thing over the easy wrong thing, you're voting. Every time you keep a commitment to yourself, you're voting. And your identity is nothing more than the pattern of your votes. You don't need to win every vote, but you need to win the majority. And you need to keep voting day after day, week after week, month after month, until the new identity has more votes than the old one. This is where the old self tries to come back. Usually around week 2 or 3, you've been voting for your new identity. You've been acting as your best self, and it's been hard, really hard, and your old self whispers, "This is too difficult." Maybe you were right about who you are. Maybe you're just not the type of person who can do this. Maybe you should go back to being comfortable. And this moment right here, this is the test. This is where you prove whether you're actually committed to letting go, or whether you were just experimenting. If you go back to your old patterns, if you listen to that whisper, you're telling your brain, actually, that old identity is still me. This new behavior was just temporary. I'm still the same person I've always been. And your brain will gladly comply. It will pull you right back to your old patterns, and you'll have to start over. But if you recognize that whisper for what it is, if you see it as the death throes of an identity that's losing its grip, and you act according to your new identity anyway, something shifts. The old self gets weaker. The new self gets stronger. The balance tips. Around week 6 to 8, if you've been consistent, if you've kept voting for your new identity even when it was hard, something remarkable happens. The new behaviors start to feel normal. What required massive willpower at the beginning starts to happen almost automatically. You're not fighting yourself as much anymore. The resistance decreases. You're becoming the person you've been acting like. The identity is taking hold. But you're not done, because the old self is stubborn. It will try to come back in moments of stress, in moments of weakness, in moments when you're tired or overwhelmed or emotionally vulnerable. It will try to reassert itself. Just this once. You've been doing so well. You deserve a break. One time won't hurt. And this is where you need to be absolutely firm. You need to recognize that there is no just this once when it comes to identity. Every action is either voting for your new self or your old self. There's no neutral ground. There's no time out. You're always casting votes. So when the old patterns try to resurface, and they will, you don't negotiate. You don't debate. You don't consider whether just this once would really matter. You simply say, "That's not who I am anymore," and you act according to your new identity. Immediately, without discussion, because every time you do this, every time you refuse to be your old self, even in a moment of weakness, you're reinforcing the new identity. You're proving to yourself that the change is real, that it's permanent, that you're actually different now. Over time, usually somewhere between 3 to 6 months of consistent action, the new identity becomes dominant. It's not that you'll never be tempted by old patterns. It's that those patterns no longer feel like you. They feel foreign. They feel wrong, like putting on clothes that don't fit anymore. You've actually become someone different, not slightly improved, fundamentally different. The way you think is different. The way you respond to challenges is different. The choices you make automatically are different. You are different. And when you reach this point, when you look back at who you were 6 months ago, you'll barely recognize that person. You'll see clearly how limited they were, how small they were thinking, how many excuses they were making. And you'll feel grateful that you were willing to let them go, that you were willing to endure the discomfort of not knowing who you were for a while, that you were willing to sit in the void and consciously create someone new. But here's the truth that Brian Tracy emphasizes, and this is crucial. This process never ends. Your best self today is not your best self in a year. There's always another level. There's always another version of you waiting to emerge. And that means you'll need to let go again. You'll need to release the identity you've created and step into the void once more. You'll need to ask again, who am I becoming now? This is the pattern of continuous growth, death and rebirth, letting go and becoming, over and over for as long as you live. Most people are terrified by this. They want to arrive. They want to become their best self and then stay there, comfortable, finished, complete. But there is no arrival. There is no finished. There is only evolution. And evolution requires that you keep letting go of who you've been to make room for who you're becoming. It requires that you never get too comfortable with any version of yourself. It requires that you stay willing to die and be reborn again and again. This is what it means to truly become your best version, not achieving some static ideal, but committing to a lifetime of letting go, a lifetime of releasing outdated identities, a lifetime of sitting in the uncomfortable void and consciously creating yourself anew. Most people will never do this. They'll cling to one identity their entire lives, maybe making minor adjustments around the edges, but never truly transforming. They'll die as a slightly modified version of who they were at 25. But you don't have to be most people. You can choose the path of continuous transformation. You can choose to let your old self die, not someday, today, right now. You can look at who you've been, acknowledge it honestly without judgment, thank it for getting you this far, and then release it completely. You can sit in the discomfort of not knowing who you are. You can ask who you're choosing to become, and then you can start voting for that identity with every action, every choice, every moment. This is your choice. This has always been your choice. The only question is, are you ready to let your old self die? Are you ready to stop defending your limitations? Are you ready to release the familiar? Are you ready to sit in the void? Are you ready to consciously create who you're becoming? Because your best version is waiting, but it can't emerge until you make space for it. And making space means letting go of everything you've been clinging to, everything that's keeping you small, everything that's keeping you comfortable, everything that's keeping you the same. Force yourself to let go. Force yourself to release. Force yourself to allow your old self to die. It's the only way to become who you're truly capable of being, the only way to become your best version. And the time to start is not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when circumstances are perfect. The time is now, this moment. What will you choose